Hello and welcome to tonight's dev stream where we're going to be working on Streamline for the Mac, a new app that I am building, and we're going to actually be doing some design work because last week on the Streamline stream I came to the conclusion that I don't really know how I want Streamline to work. There was some sort of disconnect there where I wasn't feeling that things were working correctly. So I ended the stream and said that I would have a think about what exactly I want the various screens in Streamline to do and how I really want it to work. And I actually had a bit of an epiphany. And it has effectively changed how I'm going to be approaching Streamline. The basic purpose is going to be the same, but I've tweaked how I want it to work. So, if you me 1 second, because I just need to set something up. I will then switch us over to our UI. So, if we switch over, this is what we're going to be working on today. Actually, we can probably hide the sidebar while we're working on this, because we're going to be spending the day in Photoshop and playing around. So, before we actually do Photoshop, I am going to switch over to the iPad. I'm going to do some sketching of my thoughts. If we bring up the trusty old iPad, the basic idea I had for Streamline, or the fundamental principle of Streamline, is it's meant to give you more control over playback. And initially the plan is that you would have a playlist, and that would have tracks, and it would have sections. And these sections, you could give them a start time, a length, and you could give them a filter. And basically what your UI would end up looking like, or what your experience would be like, is if you are, for example, I'm doing this stream, what I would want is I would probably have a section on my playlist for this stream where I say it doesn't contain anything tagged by vocal, and I want that to run from the start will be 0 and the length would, let's say, be 15 minutes, because first 10 minutes of the stream and then about 5 minutes or so in while I'm talking. And after that, it would just continue on. And then if I wanted to switch, maybe I'm doing something else, I could have it where I could automate either through shortcuts or Stream Deck or something like that, where it may insert like another one temporarily. Maybe I want it when I go to be right back, it switches to a different playlist. And I could basically set what do I want in here, if I want it different things, but it's always picking a subset of these tracks here. And then you'd be able to do things like what happens if it switches. If you are getting to this point here at the end, usually that's easy because you just let the track finish playing and then you can choose from the expanded list. But what if you've got a track playing and then you switch to this? I wanted to do things such as where you could set it up so that when you switch to this section it finishes playing whatever song before switching to the next one, or you can crossfade. I also wanted the ability to have a global thing where you can just temporarily duck the sound. So rather than the sound playing at a constant level, you can have it and you can temporarily duck the volume down. That's not showing up as well on that. At some point I'm going to redo the layout of this iPad so it's showing the full screen. I was trying to hide all the UI of Linear, but we can do that other ways. So you can have the audio at a fixed level, but you can also have it temporarily duck. And with ducking, it's not as simple a case of, oh, I'm just going to go and mess with the volume slider. It's a case of I want it to decrease to a set volume and then increase back to the volume that I had before. So you're setting different volume levels. So when I'm thinking about all these features, I'm thinking about what fundamentally am I dealing with? Am I dealing with playlists? Am I dealing with tracks? No, I'm dealing with all of this playback stuff instead. So the epiphany I had is, let's rethink this. So we are going to rethink this. Let's add that layer and switch to a new layer. So what we're going to do now is you're going to have a playlist. And that is going to contain tracks. And that is going to work effectively like any music app. You're going to be able to have manual playlists. You're going to be able to have smart playlists. You are going to be able to add any tracks to them that you want. But you're also going to have, I haven't thought of an actual name for them, but let's just call them streams. And these streams are going to have sections. But what these sections can do is you're going to have the same start time, you're going to have the same length, and these are all optional ones. They may not have a start time, they may not have a length. But what you're going to be able to do is still potentially have a filter on, but you're going to be able to set a playlist, maybe even multiple playlists. I don't know about that. And then what you're going to be able to do is also add all these other options on. So you've got your options for crossfade and so on. But other options are shuffle or repeat and so on. So you're going to be able to set up these sections. So for the stream, you're going to be able to set up maybe a playlist. So you're going to have your stream and that can have like the root playlist that's playing. Oh, actually, no, we probably don't want that. What you're going to, it's going to be like a root section effectively. So what you're going to end up with is you're going to have your stream, which is just going to be a continuous stream going down. And then you're going to have effectively your root level section, which you get to pick playlists or have playlists go after one another, but then you can add additional sections in over it. So you could say, right, instead I want this section here. So now your root is going there. Thinking about it, probably don't want that. What you probably want is you're going to have your section. So like before, I've got my start section, and now I just have a new section. This simplifies it. So then you go to another section, and then can then have sections that appear over them, which are the ones that you interject in. So these are sections that For example, if you wanted something that is just slow songs, it could go in there and that section gets applied in. And once the section finishes, it goes back to whatever section it had before. And the key thing is you could have this where you've got playlist 1, but then you could have it go to playlist 2 instead. Or you could have playlist 1 repeat, in which case this is just playlist 1 again, and it will just continue on, a bit like looping in something like GarageBand or Logic or something like that. So you're basically building up your stream of these sections which are playlists with certain things on. So if you want to have like a slow playlist, you could create a smart playlist. So you essentially have your tracks overall in your library. Your library contains, well, if I change that, in fact, let's shift all this down a bit. So what you're going to have is you're going to have your library, which is going to contain playlists, going to contain your streams, going to contain your tracks, and then the playlist can contain tracks. We can get rid of that. So your library is going to contain all of these, and what you're going to have is the ability to add a bunch of tracks, create a bunch of playlists, and then your stream can just stream. We may have it where it starts with a default thing, and then you can add more things in, resize them easily, however you want. You could set a fixed length, you could have it just go on forever. And the key thing here is, by having all this, having these different playlists, you can use it in many more scenarios. I was thinking about it for streaming, but you could use it for if you're running an RPG. You could use it for if you want to do some sort of live music where you just want certain playlists going through, like a very basic sort of DJ thing. It would be very basic, and probably not what you need, but if you wanted it for like a kid's party or something like that, you could potentially do it that way. But it allows you to get all these different bits of music, and it's focused on playback rather than on the collection. So that is basically the rethink, where the playlists and the tracks, that stuff is going to be fairly standard. I'm probably going to still go with tracks only having a few properties, having the title, duration, artist, album, and then everything else is probably going to be the stored as tags, so that you can do all the filtering and stuff. But I think what I'm going to do is all the focus, the unique part of the app, is going to be in the streams. So what we want to do today is do some designing. We want to figure out what exactly we want the UI to look like. And we're probably not going to focus too hard on the tracks, because the tracks are, and the playlists, they're just going to be table views. So we can play around with those fairly simply. We're actually going to focus on the streams bit, the playback bit, because we need to work out what we're doing to actually create sections, define sections, how we're handling the actual playback, and also how we're handling the other feature of Streamline, which is being able to produce these windows that you can actually do a window capture on and display in a stream or something like that. So if we start by hiding our iPad, we will go back to Photoshop and actually start doing some playback, some designing. So let's take a look. What I was going to do was first start over here on the sidebar. Oh. If it's SF Pro display. At 11 point. That is 13. Okay, it's not. I wonder if it's text then. That's looking a bit closer. We want that to be the ball. That looks a bit better. Then here, want our SF symbol, which I do not have SF symbols up. Copy that, paste it in. Changed regular. I also want there. Right. That over there. Playlist. Then what we can do is we can get rid of ones here. Oh, on the layer it's not on the background because I pasted it in. There we go. So now we have those recreated. What we probably want to have is copy this up there. Be about 50. Oh. Alright. Up a bit. Okay. So what we want to have that. Oh. Was what do we have in SFs? could use a music note. Now, I wish I could get rid of that annoying thing where Photoshop paste in and when you paste an SF symbol, it does it as a it pastes it in as Myriad rather than the font that you had. And it is so annoying that it does that because you've constantly got to switch back to using SF Pro to actually get it displaying correctly. So, bring this back up. We'll call this stream. On right, so got those in. Let's see if we can find something nice to use. Go for play rectangle. Okay, so we have this set up, and when you have a stream, so this is our sidebar. So what do we need in here? So we need our basic controls. So we need play pause. We need next previous. Need volume. We're going to want ducking. Gonna want duration. whatever I want. So they contain currently playing a song. We also want to display the songs because we want to display what songs are going to be playing. So we want, it's probably the up next, or rather the queue. So we want a list of songs. It needs to be rearrangeable, so users can like remove them, tweak them, and so on. And then we need our section. Now the section could be a horizontal thing. I mean, each individual, so each section itself needs to have a playlist for that section. It needs to have a duration, which is an optional, a length, which is optional, whether it shuffles, whether it repeats, whether it crossfades, and then a potential filter, where you can filter by certain tags. You got the sections, and then you need to work out what order are you playing the section. Oh, duration and length are the same thing. Start time. For the actual stream, gonna have a title. You're going to have a list of sections. So there's one thing that I'm thinking about. There are two different approaches you could take. You could have something be open-ended, or you could have something be fixed length. You could say, okay, I want this to be 2 hours precisely. I'm going to have it this playlist at the beginning, then go to this one, and then at the end switch to that one. Or you could have it just be like flexible time, and if you want to end, you have to explicitly switch to your ending section. So the question is, maybe let's switch back to the iPad. So there are multiple ways of doing this. We could have it where we show it based on time, where you have a fixed time, and let's say this is a 2-hour stream. So you've got 1 hour there, 30 minutes, 50 minutes. So I want the first 15 minutes of the stream not to have any vocals. So I would add a section in there, and it would be that size. And then I would have another section that would go, and then maybe at the end I would have an ending one. And that's a fixed size. The problem there is you need to know how long something is. Another option is that we don't have anything showing length. You just have your first section, your second section, and then your third section. And this one is going to be fixed. This one is going to repeat. And then that one is going to end. And then you have the end of the stream. If you had, if this one also repeated, then we could hide that and just say that it's going to continue on. So I think doing it that way, we've got these distinct blocks, probably works best, because then the whole concept of time doesn't matter. And then what you can have is it's easy to, for example, if you want to have a manual section, because you're going to have your sections, but then the actual sections that you use are going to be different. You're going to have sections that you're going to be able to insert into here. So you'll be able to insert something into here and maybe drag it onto here, and that will like split it in two so that it inserts it into this bit, but it shifts this one along, so it ends up looking like, if this is A, B, C, we end up with B, which is no longer repeating. You're going to go to D, and then you're going to go to C. So that's a way of doing it. Another way, potentially, is you're going to have your base thing, where you're just going to say play playlists 1, 3, and 5. So that is your base, and it's just going to go through those. You set up your settings. And then you can say, but in this bit, I want to override something here. And all of these other bits are things that you explicitly have to do. So you could say, I explicitly want this one to appear at the start. And I want them to, like certain ones to come in after a certain length of time. And it will automatically insert them in. But you have your basic playlist selection from for the stream and your basic setup there, but then you have sections that override that, and whenever a section ends, it goes back to the basic playlist. So I'm wondering whether that approach might make more sense, because then it is a sense of you have the base and then you have these other things that override it, and it sort of makes a bit more sense because you're generally going to have a background. I mean, there are two options here. You have a base and you switch between, or you have no sort of base and you instead everything is equal. There's no sort of base, no concept of a base. It's just, if you want to switch back, it will switch back, and you can either, if you want to have something, it can split the current one, or it can come after it. But it's a question of whether this idea of splitting that in two, actually that should be B, because then the is there. So it's a question of whether we want this concept of splitting this in two and inserting something in, or whether we want the other concept of you've got a base and you overlay on it. So Don't know if anyone in chat has any thoughts on that. It seems like these are the two real options. How should the old storyboards 2 work? In what way? Okay, so it has a timeline view, because I'm thinking some of a timeline here, but I mean, like I said, the problem is this is kind of open-ended in its timeline. And the key thing is the timeline is just giving you the flavor. The actual list of songs will be shown in the queue. The source of truth is the queue, so you'll be able to override and move stuff around. So you may have something, if you were to have, say, 2 sections back to back, you may have a song that is from here, but when you get to the queue and you've got your list of songs, this is the first section's worth of songs, and then we're switching to here. You may decide, actually, I want that one to go into there. So, therefore, that's moved up there. That will be played, but the sections are still essentially the same. And the queue will only update when a song plays, and then it will sort of, anything afterwards, it will start actually, like it will delete that, and then you'll get to this song here, which has been moved up, so then it will play through that, and then it will play through that, and then that, and that, and then if you start chopping and changing sections around, then it will obviously update the songs. But yeah, it's all a question, like I say, of whether it is, you think of it as, do I have a thing with stuff layered on top, or do I just have a set of things going along? Well, all the stuff I was meaning about dragging the songs around, it's like how you can set a playlist going, and the players will play it in the music app, but if you go to the playing next thing, you can rearrange it. Like part of the reason I'm building this is every time I start the stream playlist playing in the music app, I have to go through and it shuffles them, but I then have to rearrange that shuffle manually to be able to get rid of songs that have vocals in them from the start of the stream. So that is just the stuff with tweaking the music. But the key thing, that isn't really the problem. That is just what I'm wanting to have happen. The key question is, how do you actually have the streams work? If I just clear this. So the thing is, you have your root stream, and this you basically check from a list of playlists. So you'd have your playlists here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say you check 2 and 4. Those are the 2 playlists, and you'll say, basically, do you want them to shuffle and it will just keep playing. You can say whether they shuffle or not, and it will just keep repeating through these playlists time and time again until I'm picking songs from those playlists until you stop. And then if you want sections, you can basically add a section on top, and that will override what goes there. You can add a section in, and this could, you say this needs to start after an hour, or it could be something that you manually choose. I want this section to play now, and that section will take over, and maybe that section repeats, so that section continues until the end, until you either stop that section or change it. Or the other option is we don't have any of this default stuff, and you just have, okay, I'm going to have a section for the start, and then it's going to go to my main section, and then it's going to, maybe I'll have another section there, and then I'll have my main section again. And what you could do is I could set it up where, like in my case, I would have an intro, and then I would have a main. So intro, main, and that's basically what my stream would look like. But then I would have other sections. This is the actual timeline, as it were. And what I would have is you would have a list of other sections down here, and I could click and drag this, and I could either, for example, insert this into here, so I want it to play after the main section, so that is just like you're building it normally, or as the main section is playing, I could drag it onto the main section, and what that would do is basically add it after main. But if main is but what it would basically do is say either finish the current song, or you either finishing the current song or crossfading immediately to it, and then it will go back to main. So it's like basically doing a split down the middle and saying, okay, finish up with main, switch to this one, and then you'll go back to main. Yeah, that's what I'm going to have. There's going to be so the queue is the track list, and that is basically going to be like this playing next thing here. So this is what I'm basing the queue off. You're going to just have this playing. But the key thing is working out how do we want the stream to work. So that's the thing that I'm trying to work out. Do we want it where your stream, you have an underlying thing where if you had 0 sections, it's literally just playing through a bunch of playlists that you have. And it's just saying, I have selected playlist 2 and 4, and I want them to shuffle. Okay, I'm going to have playlist 2 and playlist 4 completely shuffle. Or if I don't shuffle it, it's going to go through playlist 2, then through playlist 4. And then it's going to go back to playlist 2 and playlist 4, and it's going to repeat until you stop. Or do I not want to have that and just say, if I want to have playlist 2 and playlist 4, and then I create a section that contains playlist 2 and playlist 4. Oh yeah, I think a vertical thing would work. It's just horizontal screen on here. So it will probably be, you'd have your intro, and then you'd have your main, and so on, and it would just be bubbles going down. But the question is, I mean, if you're doing vertical, you have to really do it this way, because yeah, if you drag the playlist on, it would auto create a section for just that playlist. Well, the question is really, do you have, because you have these sections, and the sections basically contain what playlist should you play, and I'm becoming convinced in my own head that sections should be able to have multiple playlists in. do you want like those sections just to be a list of sections that are all equal? There's no difference between them. It's just a case of some of them you may say start at a particular time, some of them need to come on, or do you want it where you have like a fundamentally underlying root section that whenever one of these sections up here finishes, it always goes back to this base section, and that base section you just have a list of playlists and where it can shuffle. There's nothing else there. It's basically like having a playlist just in iTunes, essentially. It is effectively like the root playlist for this stream, and then the sections you can stick back on. Yes and no. A section is the only thing that has playback options. The confusion, or the thing I'm trying to work out, is should a stream, like fundamentally, if I create a new stream, what should that stream do if there are 0 sections? Should it be possible to have a stream where you're basically just saying, here is a stream, I've created a stream, I'm creating 0 sections, I'm just going to say this stream plays these playlists, and there are 0 sections, so you'd get 0 of the repeat of the crossfade, the filtering, the duration, the start time, 0 of that. You're just selecting a bunch of things, and then what happens is you can say, okay, I want a section to come in, and so here you will start playing. Sort of. I mean, it's like this. So the way it would work is you could have something where you've got a section where you're going to have a table. It's just going to be playlists, and you're going to have a selection of playlists, and these are the playlists for the root of the stream. And then if you tick that, and then you press the play button, it's just going to do song 1, song 2, song 3, song 4, song 5, song 6, and you're good. And let's say you then want a section to come in, then you can say, okay, I want this section I want to switch to this section. And at that point, it's going to override all of this, and it's going to apply these rules from this section, which may select a different playlist. It may select a playlist that isn't in here. It may just, or it may select one of those playlists. It may have a duration. It may change it to shuffle when it doesn't shuffle. It may not shuffle and just be a fixed set of songs that you want to play. But once this finishes, it goes back to this default. So that is one way in which streams could work. The other way is that you do not have any of this. So you get rid of that. And instead, you start with a blank timeline. And in there, you can drag, you create your sections as you would up here. So you can create your sections down here. And then you can drag those up into here. So I want, this is A, this is B, and then I want to do A, B, and then I'm going to drag A up. So you could do it going that way. So you have just a bunch of sections. There is no, like a stream with no sections has nothing to it. There is nothing else to a stream with no sections. So hopefully that makes sense between the two options. Hey Silent Assassin, it's going reasonably well. We're trying to work out how this app should function. Steve and I are sort of talking through this all. Not the idea of a blank timeline always populated with sections. Maybe you can enable disable a section on the back. Yeah, so the way I'm imagining it is almost I'm trying to think of how best to do it. Yeah, like an automated action or a shortcut or something like that. I mean, it's sort of... I mean, if we say this is option A and this is option B. So option A is a bit like if you're building something in the music app and you've got your like drum beat going along, and the drum beat constantly comes in, and then you're adding loops over it that come in and out with stuff. So if you imagine it a bit like that in conceptually, whereas B is a linear thing where it is just A, B, C, that you're just going through things, and these don't have any durations, they're all the same size, and it is like going through an automator script. Or I mean, another thing would be like a keynote presentation where you've got slides one after another and there is no showing two slides at the same time. No, you are just going through a linear thing. Now, there are benefits to both. The benefit of this one is you can have just a fundamental background thing, and it comes in, you work on it, you have it just playing, and then the sections are just overrides. And having the duration, okay, it ends, it goes back, that's great. Having timestamps where they come in makes a bit more sense. Where they timestamps where they start makes a bit more sense of this. But I think it's more complex than option B. I think option B, where you just have different sections and you basically create sections and then you have a timeline where you're just putting those in. And like I say, some of them can just be already in there. You build up the sections, and it could just be as simple as dragging the playlist to it to create a section. But then you can have sections that aren't in there that get added when you invoke some sort of action, so that you can update them as you're playing. Well, I mean, there wouldn't really be any... Yeah, I suppose if it just pauses the timeline, then it stops. And if it gets to that, you could have it... because, I mean, the idea is that if you wanted to do A, B, A, and then just have A continue, you just set this particular instance of this section up to loop. Yeah. Yeah, if it's some sort of tabletop assistant for something like Dungeons and Dragons, then that could make sense. Because you basically want it to... Yeah. Because you're going to it's not really going to be like a soundboard sort of thing, but for like the background music, I suppose. I mean, if it became an issue, you could always have some sort of thing of like a default section. Yeah, scenes is actually a very good way of thinking about this. Yeah, so you would have scene. Yeah, so the sections are effectively like scenes. They just have filters. So you can have a playlist, you can have certain things on. I mean, maybe with the start time thing, we don't even need the start time. The duration makes sense, but a start time, you can just manually have it there. And if you want something appearing at the start, you just drag it in. So probably we'll get rid of the concept of a start time, because having something coming in at a certain time doesn't really make sense. The whole idea is you have this and you can have something playing and then you can interject stuff in. Yeah. I mean, the key thing is that, like I said, say you had a scene C, and say let's say you're doing like an RPG or something. A is your like intro and outro thing, and B is just your standard generic thing, and C is going to be your battle music. So when you get into a battle on an RPG. And what you could do is you could just drag this in, drag it onto B, and what it will do is it will split B, it will switch to playing C, and then go back to B once C has finished. Or if C, for example, is looping and it's a manual thing, then your timeline will end up being, you'd get B, it would immediately switch to C, that's looping, but you've got B again there, and you manually have to switch to the next thing. Because you may want the battle to just continue and continue and continue until you get back to B. Ah, that is a fair point. Do you want a timeline? Because if you do it as scenes, then you could say, what happens when this scene finishes? Does it repeat? Or does it stop? Or does it go to another scene? So if I just clear this, what you could have is you've got a scene, and scene A is currently enabled, and this is my intro. And maybe I just have it where you have an option of when scene A finishes, it goes to scene B. But when scene B finishes, its finish action is to loop. So you get rid of the timeline entirely. You have the scene stuff like you say. It's just a scene can say, once I finish, go to another scene. I think that actually, I think you've managed to unlock it there. For anyone else who is watching, basically the conversation between Steve and I, and I'll just bring up chat so you can see some of it on there. This conversation between Steve and I is basically how we each help each other design our apps. This is what we usually do in private when we discuss these things. I will come to him with a problem, or he'll come to me with a problem, and we'll discuss it, and then suddenly either one of us will have a revelation about our own apps, or we'll have a revelation about the other person's app, and this is how we actually get apps working. There are many key parts of Coppice that have come about this way, of Steve just saying, why don't you just do it this way? And I'm like, oh yes, why didn't I think of that? Yeah, I think the scenes makes a lot more sense. It makes it a lot more flexible. Yep, and that is what many years of iMessage threads look like. I think the two key things that stick in my mind for examples of that, for me, it was you suggesting that canvases, rather than having a side, initially there was a sidebar where you had, you basically had your sidebar and you had your canvases up here and then pages down there. And your suggestion was to make it like it is now, where you just have a single canvases at the top and then that opens a second thing. So that was one of Steve's ideas, and I think one of the things that sort of blew Steve's mind with his excellent app Pastel, which is great app for like managing color palettes and so on. When I pointed out to them, this could be quite interesting for paint schemes for like painting miniatures. And despite the fact that we both paint miniatures, I don't think you'd actually clicked that it could be useful for that. And then your mind suddenly went racing when you realised, oh, this would be great for that. So this is how software is developed when you're an indie. You find yourself other people to speak to, and then it's usually just, why doesn't this work? So yeah, I think the idea of scenes makes a lot of sense, because the whole thing I was thinking for like my whole use case was I wanted to have an intro scene, and then I wanted that to go to the main section where it's just playing stuff. Like all I really need, I don't have something too advanced. All I really need myself is, okay, this section has songs with no vocals, and then we have this other thing that is just, it's playing normally. And so I was thinking, oh, it has to be a timeline because you need to be able to drag this on and then drag the second thing on. But literally just saying, oh, it's a scene, and it's like what happens when the scene ends, it just goes to this other scene. I think it works, so. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Also going to see, speaking of painting, whether delivery services are any good. Nope, still no good. So I was meant to have 2 deliveries today. Fun side tangent. I was meant to have 2 deliveries today. I had a delivery of a clock and a delivery of some paint, which is going to paint one of the walls in my office. The paint was coming via FedEx. The clock ended up coming via DPD. Now, I love DPD. DPD are by far, like, they are the top tier delivery company. You have DPD, then probably Royal Mail, though how good they are depends on where exactly you are in the country, but it's usually DPD, Royal Mail, and then you basically just have like a big gap. Then you all have like your DHL and your FedEx and your UPS, and then you probably have to plumb it all the way to the core of the earth to find like your Hermes. So with DPD, I got a 1 hour time slot, and you can track on the app. It says you are delivery number 80. The driver is currently on delivery number 20, and they will deliver within this 1 hour time slot. And there's a map where you can track where they're actually going around, and as they're getting close to you, you will get a notification when they're 30 minutes away. You'll get another notification when you're next. And I've actually had it where I will get the notification that I'm next, and immediately as I get the notification, there's a knock on the door. So DPD delivered the clock in the 1 hour time slot that they gave me, and I got all the notifications along the way. FedEx, they're meant to be delivering me some paint. It said, oh, it's going to be delivered by 6 p.m. That was the start of the stream. It got to 6 p.m. and now it says it's going to be delivered by end of day. I would not be surprised if it will end up going to being, oh, we are going to deliver it tomorrow. And I would have waited in after that DPD delivery for absolutely no reason. And it's just like, why can no other delivery service get other stuff working? So now each delivery service has its strengths. Heard a lot of US and UK people complain about DHL, but it bought Deutsche Post package services in Germany, so here it's more reliable than DPD. I mean, DHL is not the worst. I mean, DHL with me, I'm usually the first on the route for DHL now where I live, because they will come from their depot, get to me, and I'm like first part they come across. But you get I mean, DPD are always the best for me. I know some people don't like them, but they've always delivered on time. They, like I said, they give you a 1 hour time slot. You get others like UPS, which will give you a 3 hour time slot and then not be able to deliver within that 3 hour time slot. Yet DPD can give you a 1 hour time slot and always deliver in that 1 hour time slot unless something major has happened. And then you get Hermes, which anyone in the UK will tell you, like, Hermes is possibly one of the least competent companies around. Like, most people would not trust Hermes to deliver a pillow wrapped in layers and layers of bubble wrap without breaking it. Like, I think Hermes once, I can't remember what they were trying to deliver, but they tried delivering something, and I ended up going to bed at 10 p.m. and then had a missed delivery. I woke up the next morning to, oh, they'd attempted delivery at like 10 past 11 at night. And then the next time was they tried delivering a few days later, but it was a Sunday, and I got an email saying that they were going to deliver it. 10 minutes. Oh no, I got an email saying that it was out for delivery, and then another email that had been sent a minute later saying that a delivery had been attempted, despite the fact at that time I had been sat in my living room all the time with the door within earshot and the windows open. They hadn't even attempted, and then it took about 5 days for them to finally deliver it, and they just about managed to get it into delivering before 5 p.m. I think they delivered at like 4:56 or something like that. So, yeah, Hermes are the worst, but it's like I would pay extra to have stuff come. Like, I've got another thing coming. I've ordered myself a new keyboard, the one I was talking about on the last stream, the Logitech Ergo. That's coming via UPS. And I'm just like, oh god, why? I would literally have paid. If you give me the option for DPD, I would pay. I am willing to pay £5-10 per delivery to get DPD rather than someone else, because they are just that much better. But that's my rant on deliveries. So let's get working on this. So what we effectively want, we could probably just Let's take a screenshot of this. I'm not going to use this exactly, but that, that. Oh yeah. That looks close enough. Hermes basically hires amateurs at cheap price to deliver as their side hustle. I've been looking for Hermes so far. It's all because of the draw. Yeah. I have just had a brilliant idea. It's a small idea, but I was just thinking, oh, you're going to have the playing next thing here. What am I actually going to do with it? Like, is this going to be like an overall thing in the UI? You can switch between streams and stuff. But no, it's not. It's just going to be per stream. But then I'm thinking, okay, but how do you tell if a stream is currently playing? Well, what if the current stream had a different icon? Just a fun thing. Maybe it's the filled in version or something. Though thinking about that, we probably do want something up at the top. Yeah, we probably want the actual play controls to be global. You know what? Let's have some fun with this. Let's not have all this flat design with no interest. Let's add a stroke. Don't want that to be there. Actually, probably for the inner shadow we want... No, we want the inner shadow to be like that. Probably low. Oh, wait, that's not meant to be an initial. Little bit. Make this a bit 3D. We actually want a drop shadow. Be white. Lighten. Could probably do with that. Make rock in a bit better. That should be black. I think I want to bring a bit of 3D back to app design. And we can just have track name. .13, make it semi-bold. Right. Artist album. Regular at 11 point. Want these? You want to be white, but we probably want to be a bit darker. Right, let's put something actually. Okay. This needs to be a bit bigger. What I would probably do. Interesting. Add an idea. What if the entire thing was the progress bar? What method do I override in an tree to place any CA layers I have in that view? I don't think there's an override. Don't you just make sure that the view has a layer by doing once layer equals true, and then you do view.layer add sublayer. sorry, I forgot I was muted. So you have CA constraint layout manager that can let you do some degree of layout stuff. I've never used it. I have no idea how it integrates with NSView. I have no idea how you actually use it. But if not, then I would say NSView layout is your best bet. Just override that in your NSView, and then you can do anything. It's basically, once that is called and you've called super, your frame and subviews and stuff should all be set, and then you can do any manual like once super is called in this method, auto layout has done its thing, and then like I say, you can add and remove constraints in there and then call super multiple times. It's one of the few methods where you can call super more than once and it makes sense to. But that is probably your best bet, because once you've called super, you've got all the sizes that you need, and then you can do all your manual CA layer stuff. Okay, so let's go back to Photoshop. So yeah, I'm thinking that we could have this entire thing be our progress bar. So you click on part of this and you can just drag along to do the progress. So we'd also have we've got this, we drag it over here, and I think layout is still called even when yeah, I think it's still called even when auto layout isn't called. I mean, the other thing is you've got update layer is something that you could potentially look at as well. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Why does it not show? Help. Let's view. I'm pretty sure layout is called in all circumstances. Yeah, it should be. I mean, the thing to remember is a auto layout. Yes, so there is a without auto layout as far as the OS is concerned. It's just incredibly hard to do it if you're using the frameworks at all. The reason is that auto layout is enabled on a per window basis. So all you need is one view in an entire view hierarchy. You have one constraint, and then auto layout is enabled for the entire window. And when that happens, everything is going to end up being called. Now, I think layout is called regardless, But I mean, the key thing is that Apple is using auto layout in many places themselves inside of their code, so it's almost impossible to get a window that doesn't have auto layout. So for all intents and purposes, everything is powered by auto layout at this point. It's why many of the performance concerns are sort of, I always find them a bit amusing, because it's like, oh, you're not using auto layout. Well, you're not using auto layout, it's using auto layout. It's just when you are using lots of constant values, as strings and structs do, its auto layout is incredibly fast. Right. There we are. I think that looks very nice as our main playback. Then we want SF symbols again, because we want that. X. 24 probably. That looks. I don't want the. Not allowed, is it? Why does it not want to make that SF row text regular? Thank you. I mean, the thing with Photoshop is you can just copy paste in and use them as text. It's just it keeps switching to Myriad when you paste in. I mean, going to be a yeah, it switches. Just switches it to Myriad. And I don't want it to. Default. I'll have to have a look how you can actually go about setting the default. I do think those are a bit big. Set them to point. Ah, that's looking a lot better. So no, I'm actually inclined to take a page out of your book. Yeah. I am going to take a page out of your book and of Apple's book and get rid of title because it just makes stuff cleaner. You finally ordered a Synology to replace your Drobo. How big a Synology did you go for? How many bays does it have? Four bay model with 4x4 terabyte. Ooh, 16 terabyte. Four by 3 terabyte costs the same as a 4x4. You might as well go for the 4x4 then. At that point, you're effectively getting a free drive. How much roughly does it cost, if you don't mind me asking? As someone who has to phone support less technical users, I want all the Windows titles back. I hate Windows like system preferences that change the title based on a selected tab. Yeah, having the titles would help though. I think iTunes got rid of it a while ago. I mean, I don't mind the title being integrated, but it's also one of those things of if you have a non-standard toolbar, you generally need getting rid of the title. Makes sense. £945. Oh. For the storage and the thing. That's not too bad. Because I think I spent close £100 to £200 on a basic like DAS enclosure. Like just a USB-C one to plug directly in with 4 bays, and that's with 0 storage. And then I'm going to be buying a bunch of SSDs because my backup system, I'm going to be getting a 4TB SSD for my Time Machine, and then 3 2TB ones, one for a always connected clone backup, and 2 more for like alternating offsite clone backups. So that's going to be what, 10 terabytes? And I think that's going to cost me close to £1,000 just for the storage. And then I've got the thing on top. So you're talking like £1,200 for 10 terabytes of SSD. And it's only SATA SSD, so... I don't mind having the cables. The problem I have is the amount of cables. Like I've got a cable. I mean, the thing that bothers me more is my Time Machine disk is a hard disk, a spinning hard disk, and it is probably the biggest bottleneck of my system because when it has spun down and I open an open panel and macOS needs to spin up all drives, it just takes forever. So that's why I'm going SSD there. But I'm just going to have one cable coming out of the Mac Studio going to my storage box. But that's going to have my Time Machine, a cloning, so that's 2 backups in there, plus my current backup drives. One of them is a 1TB that's going in there for additional storage. Probably stick all my stream VODs on there. And then I'm going to... I've got a 250 gigabyte SSD that's for like beta OSs and stuff, so I'll probably stick that in there as well. But yeah, I've decided even though it costs more, I'm just going all SSD because even a SATA SSD over USB-C is so much faster than a hard disk. It's just night and day for me. So it'll be alright because like I say, it's going to be a 10 gigabit USB, and I'm not going to be accessing all the drives on it simultaneously. And considering SATA only gets up to 6 gigabit a second, I can have 2 of them going at once, almost at full. So hopefully it should go fairly well. And I believe Time Machine works a lot better with SSDs these days, because I think it was a few versions ago they made it have better support for APFS, because I think previously it was still better with HFS plus Time Machine because of the hard link stuff they were doing. So we'll see. So thank for the prices are coming down. I mean, they what am I currently looking at let's see. So I'm looking at Crucial SSDs and Crucial MX500s. 2 terabyte. I can currently get it for 147, which is not bad for a 2 terabyte SSD. And the 4 terabyte one is 284, which, I mean, when you're starting to get to the point where you are well under £100 per terabyte for SSD, it starts making a lot more sense. I mean, a NAS, it doesn't really make much difference unless you're doing like video editing or stuff like that, because you're going to be limited by the network more than anything. You've not got to... macOS isn't going to spin them up and wait for them to spin up, so it should be a lot better. It's a lot more sense sticking them in a hard disk in a NAS, but yeah, SSDs are just getting too powerful. If it had been possible to get a 4-bay, like a decently priced 4-bay NVMe enclosure, like a Thunderbolt one, I probably would have gone for that as well. Because, I mean, this enclosure I've got is from OWC, and it's to fit for 3.5-inch hard disks in, and I'm going to be sticking 4 2.5-inch SSDs in. And it's one of those things of, if it had the additional SATA ports, I could probably fit like 8, 12 SSDs in it. It's that big. I think a lot of the attached storage world is still assuming that you're going to be sticking hard disks on. And I think we're finally getting to the tipping point where maybe 3.5-inch hard disks are going to start going away for that sort of thing, and we'll start seeing more switching to SSDs. Alright, let's add some volume. Yeah. Looking at the time, we're probably going to have to do a few streams to this, but that's fine. I enjoy doing this sort of thing, especially in the evenings. It is so much nicer to do streams like do design work in the evenings, because my brain can do design work from dawn until dusk, whereas coding is usually a bit harder. Alright, so we don't care about that. I think that needs. Actually, get on, but let's spit. Everything that's old is new again. We're going to bring 3D back to the Mac. Just as we found out that the M1 Ultra is not particularly good at 3D. I don't know if either of you or anyone watching saw some of the analysis about why the M1 Ultra's GPU is so, I wouldn't say bad, but so underutilized. And apparently it's all down to the tile-based memory, and because the tile-based memory, I believe, it assumes that you're going to dump a huge amount of data in, and then you're going to access that data on there without having to like do a bunch of like moving it in smaller chunks. But the bottleneck is apparently there is a cache that's only 32 megabytes, and apparently how most apps use GPUs, they do it how AMD GPUs or NVIDIA GPUs or Intel GPUs work, which isn't using tile-based memory. And working things that way, that cache is severely limiting. So that is why I think they reckon it's around like 26 GPU cores. Once you go beyond that, you're not really getting any benefit unless you get something that is heavily optimized for tile-based rendering. The problem is, it seems like tile-based rendering, from what I understand, requires a complete rethink about how you actually utilize the GPU. So because of that, there's a question of whether the M1 Ultra will ever get the GPU utilization. Now, we may see that in certain cases. Certain apps, especially Mac-specific apps, may see that. Apps that are already utilizing that on iOS and come across the Mac may use that. But it may be that we don't see that level of acceleration because Apple, because it's so different. I mean, people are already having to say, oh, I'm not using Vulkan, I'm having to use Metal. And then they've got to redesign how they're doing the app because they have to use the tile-based renderer. It's I mean, games could get ported, but it requires the game engines to redesign. I mean, the thing is, you can have things working before. You can have games working on the Mac, but the problem is there's a limit. Now, in the M2, Apple, for example, doubled or tripled or quadrupled this cache, it would probably massively unlock the performance. The problem is that Apple may potentially be right that the GPU could compete with a 3090. The problem is you need to have software completely rewritten and redesigned to utilize the GPU in the way that unlocks that. The vast majority of software is not, so therefore it's like crippled. The hardware is far more capable than the software is, and the software may never be that way. So it's just one of those things where I think buying the M1 Ultra for the GPU is probably not going to yield you any additional performance unless people start massively changing how the GPU is utilized. Now, if you're buying an M1 Ultra for the CPU, that's an entirely different thing. If you are mostly CPU bound, then the Ultra is worth the upgrade. Just don't go for the 64-core version. I mean, if you're programming, the M1 Ultra is like, it depends on the project. I've seen anywhere from 30 to like 30% faster to twice as fast. But the most shocking benchmark I saw was a Firefox compile, where someone did a clean build of Firefox, and they did it on an M1 Max, and it took 14 minutes. And they did it on an Intel 12900K, and it took 13 minutes. And they did it on an M1 Ultra, and it took 7 minutes. And it's like, that's literally 2 times scaling over the Max, and it's absolutely crushing the best Intel chip on the market. It would not surprise me if they ran that on the Threadripper, if that is like Threadripper levels, but that has like 64 threads running. So if you're doing something CPU bound, the M1 Ultra is fantastic. If you're doing something GPU bound, you're probably best off sticking with the Max, or arguably not using a Mac. Especially if you're doing something like 3D and all you are doing is 3D work. Could potentially be better on a PC with an RTX card, because they just crush. Like, if you look at like 3D rendering, you'll get stuff like Blender. CPU wise, the M1 Ultra like is brilliant at it, but then you get to GPU accelerated rendering, and like an RTX 3090 is like 8 times faster, and it's like that is not what we were sold, Apple. We were sold that it is as fast as a 3090 while using 200 watts less power, when all the benchmarks are like, it's an eighth as fast. Still using probably it's still using far less power. Right. Got that there. Let's just add one last little thing before we end. As we want a button for ducking, so whack. But yeah, I think this is looking pretty good. We still need to design the main section, but I think having the idea of scenes, what we will probably have is yeah, we'll probably have it where you could just have scenes and you can select it. Maybe something that looks a bit like shortcuts, where you have these things here. So it's just a grid of sections, and then you can choose which one you want visible. We also need to add the stuff in for like the design of the playback thing, but that could potentially be a separate window. But I think having it where you have your sections and you just start it playing with a section and then it shows playing there, I think that's how we'll do it, but we will design that next time. So I think we'll call that a evening, call that a stream, and until next time, I hope you all have a good rest of your day, rest of your evening, and rest of your week. I should be streaming again on Friday on working on Coppice, doing some more accessibility stuff. So until then, as always, happy coding.